We know Timmy's been downstairs in his room for 8 hours. And we know that for real because we've been on Netflix for 8 hours and haven't seen Timmy. Now that we're all shoved together to the reality of our lives, it's really exciting because you now get to talk. Open those doors, let them teach you something, let them show you the tools.
Welcome to an extended episode of Sex Plus Christian Parents. I'm Jason Soshnek, Executive Director for Project 619.
And I'm Thomas, pastor of Shallow Hills Fellowship in Spokane, Washington.
If you haven't already checked out episode 4, please go back and do so now. This episode is a follow-up to that episode, and specifically we're going to be talking about COVID-19, social distancing, and the impact that it's having on our experience with social media. We've decided to bring back our friends Kara and Walt to have a conversation about the impact this experience is having. Listen more to Kara as she dives into what she is seeing with regards to social media, social distancing, and this COVID-19 experience that we're all in.
We shut down on Monday, and then I could feel the panic through emails. Like, how do we reach kids? And how do we reach each other? And how do we collaborate? And how will the principal contact us? And email wasn't enough, right? Email wasn't fulfilling that. We needed this. We needed some face-to-face and talking. So it took us, I don't know how long everybody else took, but I swear it took a week before people figured out what Zoom was, and then getting everybody to actually turn on their computers. And meanwhile, our kids are talking to their friends. So I think just going back to that point is the kids have ways and know this stuff, and they do it all the time. So let them help you. They will be thrilled to show you how you can have a group conversation on Snapchat with your girlfriends. They'll be really excited to get on your computer and adjust some things for you, your settings, your grids, They know how to do this stuff. So I think it's just a really cool time, again, because we're all together. Like, there's no interference in our daily schedule. We're not busy. We don't have to go anywhere. So get in the living room with them and have them show you all these things and all these apps. And if they're teaching you, they're going to talk about their own use. You don't even need to drill them. Like, what are you doing on Fortnite? Just say, can you show me how to download Fortnite? I'm bored. And then they could show you how to download it and play it on your phone. And now suddenly you're like talking the same language. How cool is that?
What Kara just shared is really what we want this episode to be about. Though we recognize there are massive challenges that are facing all of us in one way or another due to COVID-19, we want to really point out the opportunities that are presented in our current context.
Exactly. We just recognize that there is a massive opportunity that we may not again have in our lifetime. Forced, uninterrupted time at home with our children. Listen as Kara shares one of the biggest learning opportunities that comes from our kids and how that opens up potential for conversation.
And our kids are using social media like they always have to connect with people. And it's really important during this isolation. When kids are playing group video games, they're talking to tons of people. That's good for them. Maybe not being in front of the screen for 8 hours straight is good for them, but that part's good for them. So limiting screen time, again, is a house by house and how much you want to put into that. But I would encourage, dads, why don't you get on that game with your kid? This is your time to maybe learn how to play that game that your kid plays all the time. Jump in Fortnite, make a fool of yourself. Check it out, listen to the chatter. That isn't fun for us to go down and just take our kid's headphone and listen, but maybe if we're playing, our eyes might be open and conversations might begin. I think those are great ways to come alongside our kids right now. And then we also get hangout time.
Making the most of this time will also require intentionality and being proactive with your free time. Maybe this looks like creating a schedule to go outside, get some fresh air, or maybe it looks like gathering at the same time every day to talk as a family.
After dinner, everybody goes on a walk. Or, one day I'll say at some point, everybody goes outside. So you tell me when that is and what you're going to do. And I have kids that are 17, and 15. And they don't like schedules. But if I just say, you got to go outside and do something, someone leashes up the dog and walks around the block in these slippers and box checked. But, it's just a break for their eyes, a break from whatever they're doing. Let's take those breaks together with our kids.
Here's Walt again. And now he has some observation about this already happening.
I saw more people out walking around their block, riding their bicycles, parents with their kids on bicycles, and I've lamented this for years that you just don't see kids playing outside anymore. I've even seen, kids in our neighborhood who are 6, 7 years old in pairs walking alone. There's free-range parenting going on right now. It's like old school. I joked with someone, I'm waiting for the ice cream man to come up the street. It's like I'm a kid again. But seeing these kids outside in the street is an amazing thing. So I think that's going to continue. And I'll just tell you, I walked down the street over the weekend to my office. Rather than drive, I walked because our office is close by. And people were out and people were stopping me. And I actually met neighbors who have lived in our neighborhood for years who I've seen, who I've never met before. I didn't know their names, and we would have conversations. So there's a beautiful aspect to that. And so again, I think in many ways this can be a good thing for us. And if we come out on the other side relatively unscathed, I sure hope that we don't retreat back into the kinds of things that we were engaged with before that kept us from each other and kept us from, pursuing our relationship and our growth in our relationship with God.
To close out this episode, it's important to point something out. While Kara brings up great points and has some great opportunities with our current context, it's also important not to lose sight of some of the issues with social media we pointed out in our last episode.
That's right, Thomas. It's a very real possibility that many parents and kids will just dive deeper into their devices and rely on them even more. For this reason, a balanced response to the situation is crucial. Listen as Walt shares his own journey of processing during this time.
I have found myself not even wanting to watch television, not even wanting to go to Netflix. It's sort of like I stand there and I move around in circles going, what do I do now? And as I've processed that, it's helped me on the one hand understand what the diversions have been in my life that have actually become idols that I've depended on too much, and I wasn't aware of that. So that's a good thing, right? It removes a lot of those things that were normal parts of our life that just became way too important. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, and I know that's the case. But at the same time, I think this is a good thing because when these things are stripped away, and I think this is happening for hopefully everybody in our culture, I think it sets the table for people to be removed out of themselves and their dependence on themselves to a deeper dependence on God. And I think it's a landscape that, as long as this continues, is going to become increasingly more ripe for the truths of the gospel. And certainly if it hits, ultimate crisis point, people will definitely be crying out to God. So in another respect, I think that's good. Suffering is often, it is for the Christian redemptive, and we need to see it that way. So ask about lessons learned. Now, the flip side of that is, you asked about, trends and things like that. My big concern is that with all this extra time now, we all have these tools, and rather than jumping into God's Word and our relationship with Christ and our relationship with our human families, that will retreat even further into our devices as long as those are functioning. And so I seriously wonder if our addictions might not increase, become more deeply embedded, and even for some people who weren't even there, if this becomes their diversion and their idol, that now we're lost in that. So what happens when we come out of that?
Let's not let what Walt just said pass us by. There is an opportunity that we have before us to not just occupy the space that we are in with our families, but to engage it. Take this moment and engage with your families. Maybe it's what Kara said, and it's diving into the very thing that your son or daughter is doing, playing a game on social media, learning from them how to use Zoom. And then again, maybe it's also the opportunity to go deeper and engage your own faith, and hopefully that then influences your family's faith.
Jason, I couldn't agree more. By the time we produced this episode, I would have talked to my church about the idea of biblical rest, and that it's not stopping from activity, but more being able to enjoy what God has blessed us with and creation and enjoying each other. I see this as an opportune time to be able to step back, because we're kind of forced to, but enjoy what God has given us, continuing to look to Him and build the relationships around us.
Such a great point, Thomas. Well, for our listeners, we're just so grateful for you, for this time, and for the opportunity to dive into these subjects.
Thanks so much again for listening, and we hope you'll join us for our next episode.
This podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people at Project 619. This episode was edited, produced, and sound designed by our very own Corey Crawford.